Howdy YouTube, how you guys doing? Been a minute. I've been rather busy in the run-up to this league start. I had fully intended to cover a bunch of the patch notes material and all that sort of thing, but didn't end up having the time to do so. However, I do still, despite that apology, want to bring you my league starter for next league, which is a champion, which is probably unsurprising to those of you who have been keeping up with the deliberations that people have had on the hardcore meta. Champion is going to be very popular as a league starter in hardcore next league. Though it did take me a while to arrive here. I initially wanted to do a Berserker, and as I'll show you later in the video, I even have a Deadeye variant of this build that I think would be quite competitive. But yeah, so this is a Champion Spectral Helix build, and I'll walk you through the basics of it. Part of the reason why I want to play Spectral Helix is because I believe it's going to be an incredibly strong like early game leveling skill. You can level with it super easily. That will take advantage of Tornado, which is a incredibly powerful tool being added next to League. Projectiles that collide with a tornado that you have summoned will have a portion of their damage stored in that tornado, and then as that tornado connects with enemies, it will reflect that damage back onto them. The exact numbers I don't quite recall at the moment. I believe it's a 10% damage reflection, but I don't know how frequently it procs. I think it's either 3 or 4 times a second. But the end result is that you get something like a 20 to 40% more damage multiplier for single target while your tornado is active and sitting on the enemy, which is quite good for a single utility link. You know, if it is that consistent, which kind of remains to be seen from play, but if it is that consistent, then it's something like a Vol Righteous Fire's worth of damage that doesn't use souls or require you to spend a portion of your life, which is kind of silly. But yes, so let me get into the nitty-gritty of how this build works. I decided to go for a Resolute Technique tree focused around axes for a few reasons. First off, getting crit early on while maintaining survivability in a hardcore environment is just a difficult thing to do in general, so that sort of had me already leaning towards going RT, as I wanted to do Fizz. I still think Champ Fizz Impale is extremely powerful, despite some of the nerfs to Impale values on things like the support gem and all that. And you don't really go non-crit, non-RT Fizz Impale. You can, technically, but if you're not going RT, you generally, you need to pay the accuracy tax, and if you want to do that, you want to go for crit, because, a lot of the accuracy stuff on the left-hand side of the tree is going to be kind of close to where the crit stuff is, so it just kind of lines up. Though it can be tough on the left-hand side of the tree to scale crit projectile attacks, as a lot of the crit over here is melee-oriented, which is another reason to go for RT, at least early on. You definitely could eventually go crit with something like a Paradoxica, maybe even Paradoxica Savior. There's tons of damage potential there, especially if you want to go low life, but I am erring on the side of caution here. I am assuming kind of crappy gear, and I'm also trying to be as tanky as I can possibly be, and going RT allows me to click a whole bunch of defensive nodes and a whole bunch of life nodes, getting things like armor scaling and max res and close to 200% life and all that sort of good stuff. Now, the reason for axes in particular is, well, GGG seemed to really like axes this league, as some of the masteries you get with axes are extremely powerful. Free rage gen from the tree, even though it's not particularly fast rage gen. For comparison, I believe Berserker gets rage up to 3 times a second, and the support gem is like 2.5 times a second or something like that. So this is slower than the other rage on hit sources that we do have access to, but it's also a lot less opportunity cost, you know? It's not 2 ascendancy points, it's 1 mastery point. It's not a whole support gem, it's 1 mastery point. So in terms of benefit for trade-off, I would say this is extremely powerful. And also in terms of benefit for trade-off, 1 mastery point for enemies are destroyed on kill is fucking awesome. It's just great. That's fantastic. People will warp their builds to be able to go freeze in order to be able to get enemies are destroyed on kill. So just spending 1 passive point on it is pretty good. Not to mention, you can also get Intimidate on hit on the tree now with axe nodes. You just get free Intimidate. Yeah, it's not going to be in literally every monster you're hitting, but any mob that survives more than a second is intimidated, because you hit really frequently with Spectral Helix. And you get some max rage from Slaughter. They threw everything at this. I could still, even if I wanted to, while leveling, path down to Hatchet Master and get the Onslaught going without needing the support gem, and I probably will do that. I'll probably path to Hatchet Master on the leveling tree, and eventually get Onslaught through Perseverance in the end game. And segue into the itemization from the passive tree. Wow, look at him go. What a streamer, what a man. But yes, this is a pretty darn powerful belt for next league, with some kind of reasonable gear and nothing too crazy. I'm looking at about 15k armor and 15k evasion, as you can see here, with flasks down and with not particularly good rolls and a lot of pieces of gear. And even just that is providing me a decent chunk of damage. Though this is also my Onslaught going away when I take off Perseverance. You can see I go from 850k to just over 1 million with Perseverance. And yeah, it's perma Onslaught, and it's still got life and res. It's just good. One funny thing about this, though, if you give it attack quality, it actually scales the 200 value, the attack damage per 200 of the lowest armor and evasion rating, so it makes it actively worse. So do not put attack quality on your Perseverance. In the end game, like a week plus into the league is when I'm expecting to get it in hardcore trade. You can get it much earlier in softcore trade, but nobody heists in hardcore trade. I will be aiming to use a unique helmet from Heist, the Fledgling. And if you look at the numbers on your screen now, you can see why I want to use this. Average damage, plus 79.5%. So we have about a cool million DPS with a 360, 350 DPS weapon and 6-link, I believe. That is a 21 gem. Bring that down. It barely changes. 21 doesn't do much for attack skills. I just wanted to see the difference earlier. But yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-link here. So yeah, kind of meh weapon, but a 6-link base. I trust that I'll be able to get a decent 6-link relatively early. Even on a 5-link though, you've still got 800k DPS, which is probably more than comfortable enough to be like breaking into early red maps and starting to make some currency to get that 6-link. But yeah, about just over 1 million with the 6-link and a crappy weapon. If we then throw on the Fledgling, we're looking at almost 2 million. It is quite a lot of our damage, and this is assuming a projectile travel distance of 70. We can even cut that in half, and you'll see the damage difference. It actually goes down. We can cut that down to like 50 or so. Yeah, 1.3 million. It actually scales pretty hard, harder than I would have anticipated. But yep, the reason why this is good, and I'm not going to take credit for this tech, as this is something that I yoinked from Younggrown. I'll leave a link in the description to the video where I found it, is Farshot calculates the travel distance from the point of origination for the projectile and not the total distance away from the player. So what that means is if the player is standing... Can I pull up Paint? Do I even have Paint installed on this computer? Yeah, there we go. I think it comes bundled with Microsoft. If I am this little pink blob here, if that's me, and I fire off a Spectral Helix, and pardon my horrific artistic skills here, but if I fire off a Spectral Helix, it's going to do this sort of shape. A helix, as you may imagine. That means that it's honestly not too far away from me by the time it's traveled a decent distance. Maybe 70 units is about here. And you can see it's still fairly close. So if the boss is around here-ish, it's still going to get more hits on them as it spins around and around. This is not to scale, by the way. So Farshot ends up being quite a powerful tool for the build, as it's actually a pretty darn potent damage multiplier just because of the baked-in behavior of Spectral Helix. I do not want to save changes to Untitled. Beautiful as that portrait may have been. So yeah, very big priorities for the build are Fledgling and Perseverance. The rest of this gear is pretty straightforward rares, usually 2 mods and then a crafted mod is what I plan around. Not even a crafted mod on those ones. Could craft Flat Fizz there, I suppose. Got some block on the chest piece. We got a decent amount of block in the build as well, 52%, as well as 66% evade chance without flasks. Tick those boxes. We're looking at 70% evade chance, 20k evasion. So yeah, it's got solid avoidance, it's got leech, and potentially life gain on hit if you want to fit in some Elder Rings for recovery. It's got Fortify from Champion. It's got 50-ish% block chance. It's got Endurance Charge Gen on kill. It's got Instant War Cry, so you could use Enduring Cry if you want to. I'm actually using Ancestral in this path of building for more armor, but they're both perfectly legit. and anywhere from 6.5 to around 7k life, depending on your gear. If you don't mind having lower damage than Fledgling, you can go for Crown of the Inward Eye, and that will push you up to almost 7k life, and you still have a bit over a million DPS with kind of crappy gear. You know, something like a 360, 350 DPS weapon. You can do a lot better than that. You can push 545, you get a really sick weapon, and that pushes up to 1.5 million with the Crown. And you can play around with this as you like. You can go for a double damage shield, and you can go for a frenzy charge on hit chest piece, and then turn on frenzies. Now we're looking at 1.6 million DPS, and we go back over and we throw on the Fledgling. You're looking at almost 3 million. It does have room to scale, is more my point here. It won't scale as hard as a crit Paradoxica low-life variant of the build will, which can reach 10 million plus rather easily, but will also be quite squishy without extreme investment and will not reach that damage on budget gear. The draw of this version is that while it has some room to scale to fairly respectable endgame DPS numbers, it has a very, very comfortable and consistent floor, getting about a million DPS pretty darn easily while being very tanky while doing it. Anyways, I think I did at the start of the video promise that I would show you the Deadeye version of the Path of Building, so I'll do that really quick. And then I think we'll finish up the video. And look, my Deadeye is pretending to be a duelist. So the reason you'd go for Deadeye is because you get far shot out of the Ascendancy. So this is more of a solo self-found friendly version of the build concept. Particularly if you're in like softcore solo self-found, as it is a little bit squishy, but I wouldn't really call it squishy. It's squishier than the champ because you don't get to scale block really, and you obviously don't get much in the way of fortify. I still think you could get an okay fortify with shield charge and like a 4-link while clearing. You probably get like a 10% less damage taken there, but yeah, you're not going to get the permanent 20% that champion has. However, you do have tailwind. You get far shot without needing to get the unique for it. And Focal Point is quite powerful, in my opinion. This is actually built somewhat around Focal Point. We've got Mark the Prey to scale our curse a little bit more, and the core item here would be a Poacher's Mark ring. Poacher's Mark is a very big deal. It will give you not only just enabling Focal Point while mapping, but a bunch of flat fizz to play with, and a bunch of life gain on hit to augment that kind of crappy weapon. Again, this is built around like a 350 to 370 DPS weapon. You know, things like a generic rare shield, generic rares, all across the board. I am assuming you can get spell suppression on a chest piece, around a 20 to 30% roll there. You can probably do even better than that if you want. I think I have, Onslaught on kill boots. Nothing too crazy here. Some min endurance charges. The only real big thing is the Poacher's Mark ring. Yeah, pretty much. And then 2 modules across the board. And you see this gets a little bit under a million DPS, I think, on a 5-link from what I remember. Yeah, that's a 5-link. So if you were to go to a 6-link with this, you're looking at around 1.2 million, which is very similar to what the champion was outputting. So the damage difference is not that huge on crappy early gear, mainly because you get access to far shot right away. You know, if I took that off, that is literally half the damage of the build. It's pretty important. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and you're new here and you haven't yet, do consider following the channel or following me on Twitch or whatever you'd like to do. There's a Twitter down there too. And yeah, have a nice day.